Hey there, Safecrackers! Get your combinations ready because it is time for the Comic Vault! A vault full of comics for you and me and everybody who watches. Yeah! Time to share what do we have in the Comic Vault today. Today we have Supernatural Origins, the prequel to the hit CW TV series Supernatural. So, I picked this up. Excuse me, my nose is itchy. I picked this up because one of our wonderful viewers sent us the second volume, and I found the first volume for a song at at a vintage stock, so I picked it up and decided I'd read this before I read that one. So, I just finished this, and this is Supernatural Origins by Peter Johnson and Matthew Dow Smith. Matthew Dow Smith is the artist, and Peter Johnson is the writer. So let's talk about what this particular book, is about. So it collects issues, I presume 1 through 6. Most everything collects issues 1 through 6. Originally published by DC Wildstorm. Collecting issues, yep, 1 through 6. So, of Supernatural Origins. So, 1 through 6 follows John Winchester, the father of the main characters from the Supernatural TV show, Sam and Dean Winchester, and so of course some of this is going to be set in Lawrence. A lot of it is not. Most of it is immediately jumping into going around the country. So this book starts where you expect it to, with the death of Sam and Dean's mother, i.e. this guy, John Winchester's wife. And so John Winchester kind of jumps down the rabbit hole. He starts to have a rough time with his life. He starts to feel like he's seeing things that he's not sure whether or not he should believe are there. And then he finds some contacts that can give him a little clarity, give him a little guidance through this horrible time that he's having. Although those people, those contacts, are not like family members. He's shunning these family members. He's basically shutting him off from the rest of. He's shutting himself off from the rest of his family, and he's having a tough time. And he's starting to become the black sheep of the Winchester family and of his wife's family too. People are looking at him like it might be his fault that his wife died. So the contacts that he finds are people that can help him understand what's actually going on. They help him understand what's going on with the death of his wife and the existence of creatures, the existence of demons, things of this kind. And we know at the beginning of this book that John is not going to give up until he knows what's going on, because he trusts his mind, even though he kind of doubts it a little bit. He does trust himself to a certain extent. And he goes forward and he makes these decisions that allow him to really delve into this world of the supernatural and becomes a hunter as a result. Now, how he does that is he befriends, well, sort of, I guess. He allows himself to fall underneath the tutelage of another hunter. And this hunter takes him around the country. They find different clues. And when it's all said and done, it turns out, spoiler warning, it turns out that the hunter is manipulating the whole thing the entire time, and he actually had nothing to do with the death of the wife, and the thing that they were hunting down had nothing to do with what they thought they were hunting it down for. And basically the book ends up where it started, except we do have John Winchester learning a little bit. What he learns by the end of the book, kind of inexplicably so. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that he says, well, my kids need to know this stuff. The thing that he comes to understand is that he needs his children with him. And throughout most of the book, he's left the kids kind of shuffled, Sam and Dean around, Sam being a baby, Dean being a child, and shuffling them around between relatives. And this activity is highly suspicious for most of John's family. Of course it would be. So John's gallivanting around the country killing monsters and getting his feet wet into this world of the supernatural. And by the end of it, when he realizes that he can no longer trust the people that he thought he could trust, or at least that he was willing to give it a try, he decides that I guess maybe he can trust his children more than he can trust anybody else. So he goes back, he gets his kids, and he takes them on the road. So these kids, Sam and Dean, only really know a life, or, well, Sam anyway only really knows a life. Dean has a limited time in that normal nuclear home that people tend to have in America. And they go out and they start hunting monsters. That's the end of the story. And we don't know exactly the extent to which Sam and Dean are shoved into it at the beginning, because that's where it ends. That's where the first 6 issues end. And I find this book to be interesting because I have the sinking feeling that this series, I don't know if it's still going on, I just read this book, and I know there's this volume 2, so heck, maybe that caps it all off. But the TV series eventually does address it. So this stuff really addresses the death of the mother. This stuff really does feel like it's trying to treading water and trying to make you you're trying not to conflict with the series. So it's a series of events, or with the TV series. So this book is a series of events that are something that's hard to dispute. Why? Because we know John's out there hunting monsters, and that's really about all we get in this book. We don't get any particular adventures. We don't get really any particular character development other than I need my kids with me, which in itself is a noble character arc to have. You know, I need my kids, and then you have this this moral conundrum as to whether or not having your kids with you is the right thing to do. I mean, it might be right for John, but is it right for the kids? Would it be better for John to just give the kids up? Well, at the end, he decides that he wants to keep them with him. And so I find that interesting. I find that something that should be explored, and maybe Volume 2 is the better one. And maybe that's why our viewers send us Volume 2 and not Volume 1, because this book could basically be skipped. All we really know, the only adventure that is a through line in this thing is that there is a hunter helping John to hunt down the thing responsible for killing his wife, and they suspect that it is a hellhound, or at least what they call a hellhound in this book. And then eventually they even give way to vagaries and say, this is what we call a hellhound. Other people are coming up with names for other things, and this might not actually be what the general population calls a hellhound. So if you've watched the series, this technically would not be a hellhound. I don't care. I understand this is early on. They can do that kind of stuff if they want, I guess. But it's just another piece of evidence saying that these guys are just kind of trying to tread water. It's like, you like Supernatural? Well, maybe you'll buy our book. So that's what they have. And the hellhound turns out to be under the direction of the hunter that was professing to be helping John. And so John manages to escape. He doesn't actually defeat anything. He just manages to survive. And this is all set up for something that I feel like is going to be treading water. I feel like this is completely unnecessary. And they could have come up with something a little more interesting that would have just been essentially, if we're going to have something that's just going to say that John's getting his feet wet, why can't we spend that time going through an adventure? One thing, as opposed to just say this is set up and people are looking at you and they're trying to shove you into this world. Well, having seen most of the Supernatural television series except for the current season, I watch it on Netflix, deal with it. So except for the current season, I'm not watching that. But this stuff seems like what they're saying is that there's some kind of destiny, and there are people in they're extraterrestrial, they're extra dimensional, whatever you want to call it. There are supernatural entities out there that are trying to shove the Winchester family into the fold so that they can deal with supernatural beings. And you know, as they later reveal in the series that well, now it's a couple seasons ago, but later reveal in the series, had you not been watching at all, that that Sam and Dean are the people that are the best vessels for Satan and Michael, and there's going to be some big showdown for the apocalypse. And hooray! So somebody needs Sam and Dean into the fold, and by doing so, this is how it happens. And that's what it feels like they're doing to me. I feel like Volume 2, I haven't read it yet, I don't know what it's about. I feel like Volume 2 is going to be what it ought to be. I feel like Volume 2 is likely something that would be worth reading, because it's going to be about John, Sam, and Dean, family issues, and being hunters at the same time. That's what I think this series should be. So this, if you already know that that John, Sam, and Dean Winchester are hunters, and that they go out and they create a journal and they do all that stuff, then this you can basically skip. Now, one of the things, a pet peeve of mine, I feel like the art's really interesting. I like the art a lot, but the art is this kind of blocky, Mignola-esque style, and I enjoy what he's doing. But what I don't like about it is that so often the eyes are just completely shadow. Most of the characters in this book, you cannot see their eyes. It is just completely blacked out. And every so often you can. Most of the time you cannot. And what bothers me about that is that knowing that black eyes indicates demons, demonic possession within the Supernatural TV series, then having every character, their eyes being in shadow for most every panel of this book, makes it too difficult to distinguish between demons and not demons. I don't understand why we have to make everybody in shadows. I understand why we make shots in shadows. Fair enough. It can advance the story, it can be stylistically interesting, but why is it that every eye socket is just a black pool? I don't understand it. It's like it's a bunch of humanoid raccoons. I don't get it. So, well, yeah, it still bothers me. But if you flip through it, every so often they'll have a close-up of an eyeball, so I guess maybe he's trying to drive a point home. And if there is a demon and we need to know that it's evidently a demon, which we don't get that in this book, they'll make a close-up, I suppose. But this is not particularly entertaining, but it does have some interesting stuff in it, so check it out if you like. I would not recommend it. But thank you for watching the Comic Vault, and catch us next time on the Comic Vault. Have a good day.